Have you noticed how people feel different lately? The way they speak, move, react to things, almost like something invisible has shifted beneath the surface of everyday life. Conversations feel shorter, smiles look thinner, even civil kindness seems to require more effort than it used to. You walk through a grocery store or sit in a waiting room and there's this feeling in the air, something you can't quite name, but definitely sense. It's as if the whole rhythm of human interaction has changed tempo and nobody's talking about it. But here's what I've come to understand. And it's the truth, almost no one tells you this isn't random. It's not your imagination, and it's not just about getting older and seeing the world differently. Something fundamental is changing in how we experience each other, how we process emotion, how we carry ourselves through the day. It's happening biologically, it's happening psychologically, and if you look closely enough, it's happening at the level of consciousness itself. So let's explore the question that's been sitting quietly in the back of many people's minds. Why do people seem so strange right now? And more importantly, what does that strangeness reveal about where humanity is heading? Start with what you've probably felt yourself. There's a great shift underway in human behavior, and it's not subtle once you notice it. People seem more drained than they used to be, even when life isn't particularly hard. They're emotionally flat in some moments, overstimulated and reactive in others. You can be sitting across from someone you've known for years, and suddenly it's like there's a wall between you. Not anger, not conflict, just a soft, insulating distance. They're physically present, but somehow not fully there. I've spent years thinking about systems, how they're designed, how they fail, and what happens when they're pushed beyond their limits. When I look at human society right now, I see a network that's been overclocked. Think of a processor running too hot for too long. It doesn't fail all at once. It starts to glitch. Performance degrades. Responses stutter or spike unpredictably. That's what's happening to us collectively. We're trying to operate a nervous system that was never built for this level of constant input, this much stimulation, this degree of connection without corresponding intimacy. Technology was supposed to bring us together, and in some ways it has, but we didn't anticipate how it would rewire the texture of our attention. We are connected to hundreds, sometimes thousands, of people through screens, yet we struggle to be present with one. Every notification is a micro-interruption. Every scroll is a micro-decision. Every post is a micro-performance. The human brain evolved to manage a village dozens of meaningful bonds, not thousands of ambient signals. Now it's trying to metabolize the emotional noise of the entire planet. We weren't built for this, and the cracks are starting to show. But this goes deeper than phones and habits. To understand why people feel so different, you have to look at what happens inside the human psyche when pressure builds without release. Anything you suppress doesn't disappear, it stores. In physics, we call it potential energy. In human life, it becomes emotional backlog. When people bury fear and anger and humiliation because survival demands that they keep moving, when they push down grief because there's no time or space to feel it, that energy doesn't vanish, it waits. Hold a beach ball underwater. You can do it for a while, even a long while if you're strong. But the moment your grip slips, the ball doesn't rise gently, it erupts. Right now, whole populations are letting go involuntarily. Deferred grief, deferred rage, deferred truth. It's surfacing in ways that seem disproportionate or bizarre. A stranger explodes over a minor inconvenience. A family fractures over something trivial. A public debate curdles into hostility within seconds. It's not that we've become worse people. It's that the backlog is breaking containment. Here's the part most observers miss. This isn't only personal. It's collective. When an individual denies something, it shows up in their behavior. When millions deny similar things at the same time, it shows up as culture. The anger in the checkout line, the numbness in a room full of people, the sense that we're becoming more robotic, less reachable. That's not random madness, it's a system trying to heal itself by revealing what's been hidden. Wounds have to become visible before anyone can tend them. So when someone feels off, when you sense a subtle vacancy in their eyes or a stiffness in their voice, what you're witnessing may be something more profound than rudeness or fatigue. You might be looking at the human unconscious rising through the floorboards of ordinary life. It's uncomfortable. It looks like chaos. But chaos is the first stage of reorganization. Before any system restabilizes at a higher level, the old order has to become unglued. Psychology alone doesn't explain the whole picture. To see the rest, you have to zoom out to the culture we've built, its incentives, its myths, its daily choreography. We designed modern life to be efficient, convenient, scalable. Somewhere along the way, we optimized everything except meaning. We can summon any piece of information instantly. We can purchase almost anything with a swipe. We can broadcast our lives in real time. But the infrastructure of connection hasn't kept pace with the infrastructure of communication. The interface is crowded. The inner life is empty. Look at a typical day. Wake. Reach for the phone before the soul fully returns from sleep. Ingest a feed, then a breakfast, then a calendar full of obligations. Do work that may pay well but doesn't necessarily matter. Return home through traffic and screens. Compare your private mess to other people's public polish. Feel a vague ache you can't name. Numb it with distraction. Sleep. Repeat. None of these pieces are evil, but stack them together and you get a blueprint for quiet despair. We've become consumers of one another's services rather than co-creators of shared depth. And that trade has a physical cost. Mind and body aren't two systems, they're one organism. Thought becomes chemistry, emotion becomes tissue. Over time, a culture's habitual states of mind imprint themselves in the biology of its members. Consider the gut, the second brain, as it's sometimes called. A large share of the body's serotonin is produced there, so is dopamine. These aren't minor players, they're the scaffolding of mood, motivation, and resilience. What happens when that ecosystem is destabilized by ultra-processed diets, chronic stress, sleep debt, antibiotics given routinely and thoughtlessly, and environmental inputs our bodies barely recognize? The microbial orchestra falls out of tune, the nervous system inflames, the baseline shifts. What feels like people getting meaner may sometimes be individuals attempting to function while their neurochemistry is misfiring. Irritability rises, patience shrinks, joy goes quiet. When your body is stuck in emergency mode, compassion is a luxury, your resources are rationed for survival. The tragedy is that most of this deterioration unfolds invisibly and slowly. People adjust to a diminished baseline without realizing they've adjusted. They wake up inside a smaller version of themselves and call it normal. Multiply that by millions, and you don't just get different people, you get a different atmosphere, a society with less margin for error, a public square more flammable, a home more fragile. And because the change is distributed no one dramatic cause, just 1,000 subtle degradations, it's hard to name and harder to reverse. Yet even biology, psychology, and culture together don't fully account for the strangeness. There is a further layer, the one many dismiss because it doesn't fit neatly within a laboratory or a spreadsheet. Consciousness, not thought, not emotion. The simple, luminous fact of awareness itself. For most of history, most people lived on a kind of useful autopilot. Survival encouraged routine. Identity stayed fused with thought and feeling. When pain arrived, you were the pain. When shame arrived, you were the shame. There was no distance inside from which to witness the weather of the mind. But pressure has a peculiar gift. It breaks the casing. When external structures wobble enough, many people begin to notice what had always been quietly present, their own awareness. They see the voice in the head as a voice, not as who they are. They notice that anger is a state that arises, peaks, and dissolves, not a permanent self. They catch themselves mid-reaction, and for one heartbeat, have a choice. That tiny moment is a revolution disguised as a breath. And once you've had a few of those breaths, you can't fully return to the old sleep. Unfortunately, awakening doesn't begin with bliss. It often begins with mess. Everything you weren't ready to feel when you were unconscious now asks to be felt. The backlog comes due. Individually, this looks like a breakdown. Collectively, it looks like a world losing its mind. But another way to see it is that we're in the corridor between floors. The old level has been exhausted, the new level isn't fully built, the lights flicker, the elevator stalls, panic rises. Then, if we don't pry open the doors too soon, we reach a landing. History follows a similar rhythm. The Renaissance didn't arrive in a season of comfort, it arrived after a plague. The Enlightenment didn't emerge from peace, it emerged from the exhaustion of dogma and war. Before something better settles, something brittle has to crack. The cracking is what we're hearing now. Seeing this doesn't absolve us of responsibility, it directs it. You cannot control civilization. You cannot force a culture to heal on your timeline. You cannot make strangers be kind. But you can control the one territory where your consent is required, your inner stance toward what is happening. That stance, your chosen way of meeting the moment, determines whether you amplify the noise or become a tuning fork for something steadier. The last human freedom, someone once wrote, is the freedom to choose one's attitude. Not as a slogan, but as a daily discipline. It's the difference between being a mirror and being a lamp. Mirroring takes no effort. You just reflect whatever chaos you're shown. Lamp work is harder. You supply a quality of attention the moment didn't have a second ago. This is not about passivity. It does not mean enduring harm. It means refusing to borrow the world's unconsciousness and call it yours. Practicality matters here. Try this. The next time you're with someone who feels unreachable, flat eyes, clipped tone, and the sense they're speaking through glass, place a fraction of your attention on your breath and a fraction on the feeling of your feet in your shoes. Let your spine lengthen slightly. Soften your jaw. Then, without announcing any of this, let your voice slow by 5% and your gaze stay steady for 1 extra second when they finish speaking. Often, their system will unconsciously entrain to yours. Not always, but more often than the cynical mind expects. Presence is contagious, so is panic. Decide which you want to carry. This is why individual work isn't selfish, it's service. Each steady nervous system becomes a note of coherence others can borrow. Each honest conversation becomes a room where pretense and performance relax, just enough for truth to exhale. Each act of attention in a distracted world is an offering. You won't see immediate metrics, but culture changes exactly this way, quietly, along interpersonal fault lines, until one day the map looks different. What might the next era look like if enough of us commit to that path? We already have the tools of a more humane civilization. We just haven't learned to use them at the level of awareness they require. Imagine technology designed not to capture attention but to restore it. Food systems organized not around shelf life but around vitality. Education that teaches how to feel and think in dialogue as rigorously as it teaches how to compute. Work calibrated to dignity and purpose rather than mere throughput. Cities built around belonging as carefully as they're built around transportation. This is not utopia, it's design. The elements exist. The limiter is not engineering, it's consciousness. Give a shallow mind a powerful tool and it becomes a weapon. Give a steady mind the same tool and it becomes a bridge. So the project ahead is not merely to invent new things, but to become new kinds of users, people capable of wielding complexity without losing simplicity, capable of speed without sacrificing stillness. You don't need permission to begin. Start with the simplest levers. Sleep as if you're responsible for another person's day tomorrow, because you are. Nourish your gut like it's a mood organ, because it is. Move your body until your mind unclenches. Replace one slot machine app with a book that lengthens your attention span by 5 minutes. Sit with one friend and agree to keep your phones face down and your questions genuine. Catch yourself performing and choose gently to relate instead. Vote with your eyes and your calendar for what you want more of. These micro choices won't trend. They will, however, compound. But what about when the world is plainly unkind? When headlines bruise and institutions fail? When the person in front of you is acting from their smallest self? Here's a useful distinction. Compassion doesn't mean proximity. You can keep your heart open and your boundaries firm. You can say no without closing. You can step away without contempt. You can refuse to be recruited into someone else's nervous system while refusing to dehumanize them. That balance, clean boundaries, warm regard makes you hard to manipulate and easy to trust. If you practice long enough, you'll notice a paradox. The world feels harsher than it used to, but you feel less fragile within it. That's not because things improved overnight. It's because you're developing interior space. You can witness your reactions instead of being welded to them. You can metabolize fear without leaking it onto the nearest person. You can tell the truth kindly. You can be exact without being cruel. You can apologize without collapsing. You can forgive without forgetting. These are not hacks. They are the muscles of maturity, and they change rooms the way a window changes a stale house. There's a deeper truth woven through all of this. People have changed, yes, but so have you. Maybe the reason the world feels more jarring isn't only that others are more unconscious, it's that you're less asleep. Your perception has grown more precise, and precision makes contradiction harder to ignore. You're noticing what you used not to notice, the tiny ways we abandon ourselves to be liked, the subtle violences in polite conversation, the way a whole room shifts when one person tells an honest story. This sensitivity can feel like a curse at first. It's not. It's a sign that your light is brighter. The shadows are merely easier to see. We stand at a fork. One path says, "This is the end." It gathers evidence of decay and concludes that humanity is a failed experiment. The other says, "This is the labor." It takes the same data and interprets it as the turbulence of transition. On that second path, you don't deny darkness, you contextualize it. You stop glamorizing cynicism as intelligence. You train your attention on the human beings and institutions quietly choosing courage, because attention is water and what you water grows. If that sounds naive, consider which stance produces better outcomes. Despair can masquerade as sophistication, but it builds nothing. Hope, properly understood, is not a mood, it's a discipline. It's the choice to participate in solutions sized for your span of control. It's the resolve to hold a vision long enough for other people to see themselves inside it. It's the patience to work at human speed while the culture worships immediacy. So if this message has stirred something familiar, a recognition, a memory, a grief, a desire, trust that you're not alone, there are more of us than you think, people who can feel the tectonic plates moving and would rather meet the shift with responsibility than with blame. People practicing presence in small rooms, people rebuilding trust where they stand, people refusing to outsource their conscience to a feed, people who understand that the hinge of history is always a person choosing to stay awake 1 minute longer than is comfortable. If you want practical rails to run on, take these with you. Breathe before you reply. The extra beat is where wisdom lives. Name what you feel without making it someone else's fault. That's honesty without violence. Ask one better question in every conversation. Curiosity is a solvent for contempt. Move your body until your mind softens. Physiology first, philosophy later. Tend your inputs like a garden. What you consume becomes your conclusions. Replace performance with presence at least once a day. Give someone the gift of undivided attention. Keep a small promise to yourself every morning. Integrity accumulates quietly. Let your boundaries be simple sentences. No, thank you. That doesn't work for me. Here's what I can do. Read long things. Attention is a muscle. Train it. Touch what is timeless: nature, art, scripture, silence, so the news can shrink back to size. None of this will make the world less strange overnight, but it will make you less estranged from yourself within it. And a person at home in themselves is rare enough to change the weather of a room. Rooms make households. Households make neighborhoods. Neighborhoods make cultures. There is no other route. People seem strange right now because we are attempting, perhaps for the first time at this scale, to evolve in real time, from compulsion to choice, from performance to presence, from separation to belonging. Evolution is messy at close range. It looks like confusion and argument and fatigue. But if you zoom out just a little, you'll see the pattern that every serious transformation shares. Pressure, cracking, disclosure, reorganization, integration. We're somewhere between disclosure and reorganization. It's not comfortable. It is promising. So don't let the turbulence persuade you that nothing matters. Don't let other people's numbness make you doubt your own clarity. You are noticing what you're noticing because you are ready to notice it, which means you are ready to contribute in the only way that ever scales, by embodying what you wish existed precisely where you are. Keep your awareness sharp. Keep your compassion active. Choose meaning over distraction, connection over performance, steadiness over spectacle. Trust that every time you do, you're not just improving your day, you're altering the field other people live in. One interaction, one breath, one boundary, one act of courage at a time. That's how worlds actually change. Not through grand gestures, but through millions of small, stubborn fidelities to the better. Keep going. The world needs your consciousness now more than ever.